and welcome back! It's literally been so long since I've made a video or interacted with the community at all. And I'm happy to be here. I hope you guys are doing well. I can't wait to share with you what I've been up to lately. Yeah, December marks my 5th year of fiber art, but right now it's autumn, which basically means it's time to reflect on our summer projects, wrap up some sweater whips, as well as participate in Stash Bust September, both for our yarn and our emotional well-being. That said, I wanted to take some time to reflect on my artistic journey up to this point. I actually quit doing art full-time recently because I've been outgrowing some of my old practices. I don't know if I should turn a light on in the back. Give me one sec. Okay, yeah, that looks a little bit better. This video is purely my opinion and my observations over a 5-year period. I also have some notes here because I express myself best when I have written everything down. I'm also going to be working on a huge project while we chat, so if you want to pause here and grab your own project, go for it. To preface this, I started knitting and crocheting right after a breakup. I seem to start all my hobbies after a breakup. I should really look into that. This person and I met through friends, and we went to a very small high school, so we were involved in basically everything together. But because of that, when we broke up, everything that I did reminded me of him, so I had a hard time enjoying the creative outlets that I had already established for myself. Then I joined the knitting club in college. I actually only went to 1 or 2 meetings. And they gave me this really pretty polyamide yarn. I was concerned about the material though, because at that time I didn't really know which fiber would be best for my preferences and sensitivities, but I knew for sure that anything that would get scratchy over time would be really bad for my eczema. And then that's when I found out that my mom had also been knitting when she was my age, and she went to a Joann's that was nearby me, and she bought me some very soft pre-looped blanket yarn pictured here. And that first year of my knitting / crocheting ish, I spent time making like as much as I could, starting from scarves and then hats, and then eventually at the end of the first year I started making cardigans. The next year was 2020 when the pandemic started, and I didn't really know what else to do with myself, so I started posting my work to TikTok, which started really taking off, but at the same time, I kind of realized that the rate at which I was starting projects and putting out my designs might not be sustainable in the future. At one point, I had 9 cardigan orders to finish in 1 month, which was like the dream. And it was telling me that I could do this. It was a possibility for me to do this as my line of work. But that's when my hand cramps started, and you can imagine the effect that that takes over time. Another thing about being home during lockdown was being able to spend so much time exploring different creative outlets, and oops, I accidentally knitted instead of purled. And also learning about being okay with spending time with myself, and that gave me a lot of perspective on why I choose to make certain pieces at any given time. On the flip side, because I was by myself so much, I spent so much time online like anyone else. And I faced a lot of artistic criticism, both from people who knew how to give artistic critique and wanted to see me improve, and also from people who just wanted to share their opinion on a piece of clothing without really taking into consideration the person who conceptualized the idea. The thing about social media is that it's great for reaching people in the community who you wouldn't have met otherwise, but at the same time, things can go south and your posts can be found by people who can find a problem in a tiny detail, or people who are actively hateful towards your existence. More on that in a little bit. But then there are also people who think that they're completely anonymous and can say some really out-of-pocket things as a result. But when I give them a calm and well-researched reply, I'm often told, if you didn't want people sharing your opinion, then you shouldn't have shared this video at all. And I have a huge issue with this because it reinforces the idea that only certain stories can be told and that people won't be receptive to anything else, which isn't true. And it's part of the reason why I film my process in the first place, because there are people who have had similar experiences to me. And if my stories don't resonate with someone, then that just means that this piece or my story isn't for them. Wherever someone is in life, everyone's going to have an opinion and everyone's going to want to share that opinion. But social media is structured like an echo chamber that has exaggerated the importance of any one individual's opinion and has equated that to expertise. And if you want to share your art while also avoiding this type of person at the same time, taking on all this input from the public eye asks you to take extra steps of emotional work and do a little bit more surveillance on yourself and your content to make sure that it passes a criteria that will hopefully equate to people like this scrolling past and not saying anything. This, at the same time as putting out content at this rate and taking even more time to observe the content that you put out, leans into the idea of hustle culture. In my third year, I was a senior in college, and that whole year I was focused on writing my thesis, which was about how Asian American artists on TikTok would leverage their art to combat anti-Asian sentiments online and on social media. Hustle culture manifests itself through self-employment as a way to protest larger companies' restrictive or oppressive work practices, and by hustling, any given person has the opportunity to change their socioeconomic status. However, it's understood that there's a lot of instability in this line of work, so instead of fully focusing on your art as an artist, you're also at the same time looking for a way to monetize your creations. While I was writing my thesis, there was frequent news about attacks on the Asian American community, as well as a lot of insensitive comments, both in general and on my own videos. Racism that manifests online is referenced to as platform racism. Lots of Asian artists, especially those from the diaspora, put some of their proceeds towards mutual funds to support the individuals and communities who were directly affected by these attacks. And while this is an extremely uplifting practice, this does not come without an emotional toll, part of that being the burden of representation. Even if their art isn't directly related to their race or ethnicity, some Asian or BIPOC artists are hyper aware of their identity and how their work and words can impact the perception of their community. For example, to cite one of my sources, Peter X. Feng says it's easier for people to criticize an individual Asian actor for taking on roles that misrepresent the community without also criticizing and aiming to reform the larger structural weaknesses that creates how content is produced, distributed, and consumed. So in this case, an artist is doing more emotional work to make sure that they take a stand in a meaningful way, even if they're not mentally or equipped at all to face racism online. At the end of the day, you are online. Not everyone is going to love you, and of course you are going to face haters and trolls, but you shouldn't need to put up with hate speech or actions that are adverse to you and your community's existence. And why does this matter? Because when your existence is politicized, of course you are going to be thinking about politics and the politics surrounding your own existence, and how you, as an artist and individual, are participating in those politics. I discuss more about my observations as well as my own experiences in my thesis, but this video will be like 2 hours long if I walk you guys through my whole thesis. So I do encourage you to read through it. It is open source and available for download. Let's move on. Now picture this, you've made a huge art piece. It took you months. You used so many supplies to complete this piece. And you've done all this emotional work creating content and getting it out there, and it does okay on your own account. And then a repost account finds your video, reposts it, and it gets millions of views.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And some people are okay with this as long as they get tagged in the caption, but some repost accounts are monetized, and usually the comments are full of people asking questions, treating the repost account as if it's the original poster. Because some people don't know how to read. So the original person who put in all this work is barely getting a fraction of their return on investment. I've never had my own work reposted, to my knowledge, but knowing that someone else could just repost any of my videos and make a profit off of my work and my face without me giving permission is so disheartening. And I think that's also kind of why the actor strike is super interesting, especially as an actor myself. That doesn't need to be in the video. Also, as someone who studied a bit of copyright law, even if this practice isn't exactly illegal, it's definitely unethical. That kind of leads me into spec work and collabs. You know when you're applying to jobs and some positions say that they want you to have experience, but you need a job in order to get that experience? That can sometimes lead to working for free, also known as doing spec work. When posting online or participating in a collab, I often think about the public criticism that might come afterwards. And then there's the issue of what to make. Like, I want to make something different so then I can get paid, but I also want to make something that if the video performs well, I can recreate this piece consistently, and I can make it and sell it quickly to, one, survive, and two, to set my work apart from the crowd so I can continue to sustain my practice. We talk a lot about community over competition, but when you're trying to sell your pieces and your patterns to maintain what you've built over time, it's really hard to draw that line and not see the competition. But to be truthful, competition keeps you from growing in the artistic direction that you want to move towards. And then on top of that, there's still repost accounts cashing in on your spec work that could get you collab offers. It's a whole mess. Hi, editing me here. Something I didn't and probably should have mentioned was people stealing patterns and copyright in terms of patterns and ideas and how that's kind of a complicated thing in the fiber arts world. I didn't talk about it because I have a few friends who have made a few videos on this already, and if I get their permission, they will be tagged in the comments. Something else that happened my senior year was that I had to come face to face with my yarn sensitivity. I've talked about this in a previous video, but basically last year I changed my entire line of materials that I was using, and I started from scratch. I did a little bit more digging recently, and I can't believe that I didn't realize it earlier, but polyester is made from petroleum. And you know what else is made from petroleum? Rubber latex. I'm allergic to rubber latex. No wonder my hands were breaking out in hives every time that I use this yarn, and it would just continue to get worse and worse over time. I never ended up putting two and two together. And when you start from scratch, it's hard to maintain the pace that you've set yourself over the past few years. Last year, that was extremely frustrating. So all in all, we're looking at a pool of emotional labor, both surrounding making content and identity, and then on top of that, health concerns, and also trying to sustain myself while continuing to learn and grow. All that said, I won't say that last year wasn't an amazing year, because it really was. I got some of my first paid sponsorships, and I met some fiber friends in person for the first time, and overall, I had a lot of fun. I can't ignore, though, that this didn't come with a lot of fear of the unknown and me constantly wondering what was going to happen next and what was I going to do next. It is my moral responsibility to myself to use what I've built to continue to grow and cultivate myself as a person, and the platform I've grown and the community that I've met has been a great comfort and a safe space, but I'm the type of person who wants to try a little bit of everything in life. And I feel like I've trapped myself in a gilded cage where I have a very confusing work-life balance. And people tell me all the time that they wish that they were in my position where I work for myself and I get to do this all day. But to be realistic, in the past year, I have had a really hard time and have felt like I haven't been spending as much time focusing on the projects that I really do want to work on, because I always had to think about how they would sell and if I would make money off of it. And being able to do art full time with no support is a real privilege, not just in terms of money, but also connections. And speaking of connections, a lot of my Fiverr friends have other things going on in life besides doing this. Not that I want to be exactly like my friends, but I noticed that I do my best work when I have multiple priorities and other things going on in life. A lot of work reflects my life experiences, so I think another part of why I felt a little bit stuck in a rut is because of the hyper surveillance I've done on myself, and I haven't been taking as much time to put the camera down and actually live in the present. Not thinking about how I can turn this into a really cute reel or make a really cute pattern out of something. Just sit, breathe, and knit. And art is meant to grow with who you are as a person. And if you feel like you're encountering the same issues, it might be a sign that perhaps it's time to try a new angle. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up. So that leads to now. In the past month, I've picked up an internship and a job, which has taken some of the monetary responsibility off of my shoulders and allowed me to focus a little bit more on my in-person relationships and my personal growth. I've also picked up some new hobbies recently, one of them being watching tennis. And finally, Halloween is coming up. I'm not sure if my project will be finished in time, but I do have a few ideas. I'm also going to AnimeNYC next month, and this is my cosplay, which does have a mini pattern and video tutorial in the works. Aside from all that, I'm still planning for my next pattern to be the pants I wore to the Nike concert. God, that concert was so fun. This will include a pattern. I'm not completely sure if it's going to be fully fleshed out to the point that it'll require a very extensive test. But be on the lookout for that video tutorial. And I have a much more relaxed knitting and content schedule now, so I will see you guys soon. Thank you guys for listening. If you would like to share any thoughts, opinions, or threats, I don't know why you need to do that. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, kindly hit the like and subscribe button to join the stitches in our seams, and I will be seeing you next time. Bye! Especially those from the diaspora, put some of the proteins towards... Excuse me?